Hi everybody, my name is Eleanor Parker and I'm going to be your moderator today. I'd like to welcome you to our 5th webinar for Lean Construction Ireland, CCF Construction Client Forum and CAF Construction Academia Forum. I'm going to pass you over in a moment to the LCI core group representative who's going to introduce the topic and the speakers today. Just some logistics first of all. If you have a question, you're not able to ask it verbally, please type it in on the webinar. There is a questions box and we will consolidate all of those questions and ask Richie and Barry them in the second half of the webinar when they've finished their presentation. Any questions that we don't get answered today during the day, we're going to follow up with after the webinar. There will be a survey at the end. Please do fill this out. It's important to us to ensure that we are continuously learning and improving our offerings for you. So the agenda today will be as follows. I'm going to hand you over to John French from the Lean Construction Ireland core team to do an introduction, and then we'll move on to the presentation for about 25-30 minutes, leaving us for 20 minutes for Q&A at the end. I'm now going to pass you over to John French, core group member.
Thank you, Ellie. Hello, my name is John French, as Ellie just mentioned. I'm an LCI core group member and Construction Client Forum core group member also. Firstly, I'd like to thank PM Group, who have kindly sponsored to run all of the webinars for us for 2016 and 2017. Please give us a feedback, as Ellie mentioned, at the end of the webinar. It should only take 1 to 2 minutes. So for today's webinar, I'm really excited about it. The title is Direct Observation, Increasing Productivity by Eliminating Interruption to Trades, and by DPS. So the speakers are Richie Casey and Barry Corbett. Barry has a BSc in Manufacturing, Lean Six Sigma Green Belt. Barry's a certified engineer with a broad range of experience in manufacturing. Barry's been involved in the practical application of Lean in manufacturing and most recently in large-scale construction projects. Barry has developed and implemented direct observation as a productivity tool of choice within DPS, as well as with many other clients. And to Richie, Richie is also a Lean Green Belt. And Richie is the DPS ATG Ireland and European Operations Manager. Richie is a senior Lean Manufacturing and Construction Project Manager with DPS Advanced Technology Group. Richard has over 20 years in the experience in the semiconductor industry and the construction industry in Ireland and US companies also. Richie has significant experience in Lean principles implementation and productivity systems and structures for manufacturing and construction, as well as an extensive experience in developing productivity improvement systems to remove waste out of the production systems. So at the back end of the presentation, we will have questions for Barry and for Richie. So please hold them. Please type them into the webinar as we go. We'd like to thank Richie and Barry also for presenting this. So we pass you over now to Barry and Richie for their presentation. Take it away, lads.
Hello everyone, this is Richard Casey from DPS ATG. As John said, I'm the Ireland and European Operations Manager, and I am the Lean subject matter expert for implementation of Lean principles within DPS. I'm going to give you just a brief introduction to DPS, and once I've finished this I will pass you over to Barry Corbett, who is our Productivity Improvement Manager, for a review of the subject matter that John just outlined. DPS, we're a global organization. We are a professional services under process engineering, design and project management. We work across a number of sectors, including the advanced technologies, the biopharma, life sciences, solar, LED and R&D and QC plants. At this current point we have 1,188 people employed in 13 offices worldwide. We've enjoyed some good growth over the last number of years. We've grown by 50% in workforce and 35% turnover in the last 3 years. And in 2016, we expect to have a turnover of 112 million. And something that we're extremely proud of is we enjoy a repeat business of greater than 85% from our clients. Our lean journey started in approximately 2013 while completing a large-scale project. The client at the time was introducing the concept of lean into construction from their manufacturing facilities, and because, as John outlined, Barry and I had some very good experience, we adapted the process into lean or into DPS. So in 2014, DPS, we started on the journey by training all of our staff on lean principles. This was a combination of yellow belt and green belt training across all of our sites. And as we were learning the process ourselves, we focused our value add down to DPS products and services. We determined that the best systems for use on construction projects were the last planner system and direct observation, and we trained, implemented, identified, and started this with our on our first client site. In 2015, we in the mode of continuous improvement, we continued to look at both last planner and direct observation. We developed structures, process, procedures, and we standardized our offerings to make sure that we were continuously improving, but also giving a standard process offering to our clients. In 2016, now that we had standardized and we had effectively learned our trade, we started to proliferate the service offerings, or lean service offerings, across our current client base in the broader sense of DPS. And to this point, we've implemented last planner and direct observation in Ireland, in both the pharmaceutical and the semiconductor industry, in Israel in the semiconductor client, and also in the US, where we're currently working with our Albany-based office and also some large-scale construction companies there. As we come to the close of 2016 and in the mode of continuous improvement, we are formally introducing and implementing the role of Productivity Improvement Manager. Barry Corbett is the lead on this program for us, and this is again still part of our continuous improvement, our lean journey. In 2017, we expect to formally announce the implementation of productivity improvement managers on our construction projects. We've worked with a number of trade services and trade companies both in Ireland and internationally, and there's just a small sample of some of the people that we've worked with. Hopefully some of the guys are online and they recognize some of the value add that we've brought to their projects. So at this point in the presentation, I'm going to pass you over to Barry Corbett. As we said, Barry is our Productivity Improvement Manager. He is the lead on our direct observation systems and services, and I'm going to pass you directly over to him. So Barry, over to you.
Thank you, Richie. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Barry Corbett. I'm the Productivity Improvement Manager for DPS Engineering Advanced Technology Group. A little bit about my background. I'm originally from a manufacturing background with a collective 13 years experience between Intel, General Electric and United Technologies, where I held various technical and engineering roles. During that time, I was exposed to a lot of lean activities, and I learned a lot about the fundamentals of lean, which proved most beneficial when it came to working in a lean construction role. I've been involved in lean construction for over 2 years now at this point, and I hope to share some of that experience with you today. So with that, I'll go directly onto our slides. And the first one is removing roadblocks, interrupts to trades. So as we all know, there's a lot of stoppages on construction projects. A lot of the time, every day, no day is the same. When there is a stoppage, it's very, very frustrating. And with stoppages comes hours of lost productivity. And the most frustrating part is probably that we don't know why a lot of the time. And this is where direct observation comes in. So First of all, we have to understand what's in our way. What is it that's stopping our trade workers from producing the products that the client needs to have? So DO allows you to understand the causes, and there are multiple causes, and they all stop the work. So I've listed a few of them there. We'll talk about them in more detail. I'm sure there'll be questions about it afterwards. I'm just going to skip on to the next slide. Now this is a bit of a lean for you. So what is value added and what is waste? So value added, there's a strict criteria that we stick to when we're doing direct observation because we need to know what value added and what is waste. So let's run through the value added first. The customer must be willing to pay for it and finds it valuable. It changes the form, fit and function of the product or service that we're building, and it's right first time. So let me give you a few examples. Value added, first of all, this is what we want to increase, and an example of value added work would be welding a pipe. If we look at non-value added, this is the stuff that we really want to eliminate and get rid of. An example of that would be re-welding a pipe. That's not value added because it's not right first time. And if we look at necessary non-value added work, which we want to reduce, it's necessary, you always have to do it. Safety is an example of one of these. So if we go on to the next slide, we have what is the goal of direct observation? So to identify waste in a process, to identify how that waste can be reduced or eliminated, and this aids the trade companies to implement the corrective actions, the recommendations that we make during our observations. So how do we perform direct observations? Direct observation is activity-based. So we can look at anything from pipe fitting to cable pulling to high purity pipe fitting. The list is endless. It can be used on anything. So we identify a process to observe with the trade company first of all. So it may be something they may be having difficulty with, something that is very, very specialized and they want to gain a little more out of it productivity-wise. We record the waste occurring over the working day, and we analyze the recorded data and communicate the biggest opportunities to remove waste to the team. Typically, the DO cycle runs over 5 days, and this would be 4 days on the ground working with the value-added people, the trade workers, the specialty workers, and the final day would be writing up reports and delivering that report to the team. So what does direct observation tell us? So we focus on the biggest portions of waste and we understand why they occur. Now this graph here is a cumulative representation of all the data that we've collected over the last 2.5 years, and it is the baseline data, our initial first observations. You might think it's pretty low with a value-added score of 6%, but let me tell you there's a lot of stoppages that occur in the working day. Construction, then hence there's a lot of opportunity to change. And this graph also displays a standardized output of observations. Its findings agree with industry norms and it's common across all projects that we have investigated. So what we have observed along the way, over the past 2 years DPS have worked with over 15 trade companies, and that's over 5,000 process hours observed at crew level where the value-added work is taking place. In that time, DPS has observed value-added baselines as low as 7%. Following interventions from the DPS productivity improvement team, we've seen baselines improve by up to 200%. So let me tell you in hours worked what that means. So in a typical 40 hours a week, if you have a baseline for your activity, which comes in at around 5% value-added, that means that 2 hours have been spent doing value-added work. That means 2 hours have been spent changing the form, fit and function of the product and pushing the project along. That's the baseline. So let's move on to the next one. Report out DO data. Results of the findings are reviewed with the team and they're communicated across the team. Opportunities are communicated. Owners are assigned to each recommendation that we bring forward. Corrective actions are implemented and a follow-up direct observation is scheduled. Typically 2 to 4 weeks because Rome wasn't built in a day and people need time to implement the recommendations that we give to them. So we've brought a little bit of practicality to this webinar and we have some really, really good practical examples. Now I'm going to talk about one. Our first case study is an electrical vendor cable pull. The overview on this case study is that DPS were requested to carry out an observation of the cable pulling process. It involved multiple cables being pulled from location A to B. The trades involved were the vendor trade and a trade contractor. A substantial number of people were involved in this case study, 9 people, and when we first arrived, the expected duration for this particular activity was 4 days. Upon our first observation, we observed a value-added percentage of 23%, and the main wastes that we observed were weighting and retrieving materials and setup. Weighting was down to a misalignment of start and break times. When that was fixed, that was we really saw a beneficial output from that. Retrieving materials and setup, the guys having to select from up to 20 cables on the floor, which didn't have a whole lot of visual management. They were deciding which is the right cable, what is the sequence of the pulls, all that sort of stuff. So retrieving materials and setup was quite substantial. So let's look at a breakdown of the 10 hours that we observed. 2 hours and 18 minutes was value added, that's 23%, and about 6.6 hours were non-value added and necessary non-value added. They're the waste, the opportunity. So the recommendations that were made to the team were an agreement on start times, a planned sequence of pulls, pre-planning visual management, map out of the new process and standardization. So it's very important, if you change something to make a process better, always standardize it, because otherwise people step back into the way it originally was and we don't see the benefits going forward in the future. Improvements implemented by the team, an alignment of start times, all quality checks on the cables completed the day before, and all elevated platforms were in place. So what we observed in follow-up observation, the start times were agreed and planned, a planned sequence of pulls. So this is very important because the space is very limited in these sorts of cable pulls. Visual management was pre-planned, so all cables rolled out and labeled, so people didn't have to spend time understanding what cable was what. A new process mapped out and standardized, really, really important. So the results of the follow-up observation on this, the cable pull was reduced from 4 days to 2 days. The weighting and retrieving materials was significantly reduced, and both teams working to the new standardized process. Very, very important. So our second case study is a mechanical case study. It's on flexible pipe installation. The overview of this is that DPS were again requested to carry out an observation on the flexible pipe fitting process. The pipe has been fitted from location A to location B. It was done by a trade contractor with 2 people involved. So the first observation yielded a value-added percentage of 9%, and the main wastes were weighting, retrieving materials, and setup, very similar to the first one, although the reason why were completely different. So weighting was predominantly because the guys were waiting on materials, consumable materials to be brought to the place where the installation was occurring. The main reason for this was because the storage location for these materials was up to 1 kilometer away from where the actual tool install was taking place. So you can imagine the distance traveled there and back and the waiting time. While somebody's waiting for the materials, they can't be installing them. So there's a whole portion of waste there. Retrieving materials, also down to the location of where the materials were stored. And setting up for the day was basically the guys were coming in and they were setting up on the day they were supposed to be building. So it was maybe 10, 11 o'clock in the day when they were ready, they had all the materials and now they're ready to go. Whereas if you plan the day beforehand, you don't have to deal with all that stuff on the day. So let's look at a breakdown of the 9 hours. 48 minutes were value added, 8 hours, 12 minutes were non-value added and necessary non-value added, so that's the waste, the opportunity. The recommendations that we give to the team: bring the required materials closer to the point of use to reduce retrieving material waste. Training of the crew to develop understanding of value-added work versus non-value-added work. And develop daily planned planning team huddle with the crew. So this was very, very important. It's something we've done before. And what it does is it allows the team to get together on the evening before they do their planned work. They plan out all their materials, they plan the location, they plan where the materials are going to be stored the next day, so they're not walking large distances. Everybody knows what they're doing when they come into work, and the time to VA is significantly reduced. So the improvements implemented by the team, all planning requirements now take place the day before. Prefabrication of the most frequently used unistrut links. This is interesting because what the guys found out was that the support unistruts for this pipe were all about the same measurement. So what they did was they built up a Kanban of similar type size unistrut lengths. So all the guys had to do now was, instead of going off finding unistrut, cutting it, measuring it, they just had to grab the unistrut from the storage location, bring it to the install, and it was done. Rewards and recognition in place for all good lean ideas from crew members. So again, it's really, really important to reward people when they come up with really, really good ideas. And in this case, it initiated a snowball effect where lots and lots of good ideas came forward from the crews. So what we observed on follow-up observation, significantly reduced retrieving materials, a 5S completed on the material storage area, reducing time to select materials. The team were aligned on the new expectations at crew level, and the foreman engaged with setting up for success. The results of the follow-up observation were a value add of 17%. That's about an 89% increase in value added. And this was done within 2 weeks. Waiting and retrieving materials significantly reduced, and a 5S completed on the storage area. So, moving on to a different slide, seeking opportunity in a small country like Ireland. In 2016, it's estimated that the spend on construction projects in Ireland will be in excess of 16 billion euros. If we take that the typical labour spend is on average about 15%, that equates to 2.4 billion euros. On average, which has been stated, the average VA in construction is between 12 and 15%. So that means that out of that 2.4 billion euros, 360 million euros are spent on value-added work, but there's an amazing 2.04 billion euros spent on non-value-added work and necessary non-value-added work. If we can take a small portion of that away, that would be amazing. So over the past 2.5 years, when we've been doing our direct observations, we've come to look at what would be the perfect conditions for change in order for change to take place in the workplace, in the construction workplace. If we're looking about talking about roadblocks and stuff, if you're working in a process all day long, you can't see these roadblocks. So you need a dedicated person, a dedicated direct observer to understand fully, to be able to put all the data together and give recommendations. A no blame approach is essential. Full engagement from management is also essential. If it matters to management, it matters to everybody else. A demonstration of willingness to change is very important, and a willingness to drive that change. Removing roadblocks, what we've been talking about all along, really, really important. Reward good change is exponentially important. Collaborate, really collaborate, have those conversations so that the future is a lot smoother than it could be. Try something new. Don't be afraid to change. So one of the conditions that I've selected out here, reward good change, is one of the things I think is most important, because rewarding the guys who do your value-added work, rewarding their ideas and what they do for you, encourages other people to come up and give new ideas. That's really, really important. Notice the effort, give the rewards, and celebrate. So the benefits of direct observation: it allows us to reliably evaluate the current situation. It is reality-based. It opens a direct dialogue with the only source of value-added work on the project. And it delivers a repeatable, reproducible measure of current performance, and hence can measure improvement. It provides direction when researching potentially productivity improvements. So in summary, direct observation is about providing the customer with the reality of the current situation. enabling data-driven decisions to improve productivity by focusing on and eliminating the main sources of waste within a current process, enabling two-way communication with value-added crews, which provides on-the-job training and encourages direct feedback of value-added inhibitors at the workplace. So that's the end of the presentation today. Thank you for your time, and I'll hand back over to John now for any questions that you might have.
Very good. Thank you very much, Barry. That was excellent. Some of the numbers there towards the end were quite amazing. If we could realize some of those numbers, it's pretty amazing. Can I ask you to do one thing? Can you go back to the pie chart while we ask some of the questions that have come in? Because I think there's some amazing data within that. So the first question to either yourself, Richie, or Barry, is regarding the crews. When you go down in the field and start observing crews, what's that type of a relationship, or is it how does it work over time? How do you engage with a crew? It's almost like you're there with a clipboard observing them, and how do you break down those barriers to allow it to be a constructive discussion rather than a guy with clipboard just observing me here and saying nothing? So how does that relationship work together, and what do you do to break down those barriers before you start? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. I suppose it's all in the way it's communicated to the people you may be observing, and the communication should always be that we're looking at the process, we're looking at roadblocks, something that's stopping you in your way every day, something that's an absolute pain in the backside. That's probably the first question we ask people when we go down into a crew level. What is the pain in the backside for you every day? And after a while, they will tell you nearly every single thing that is a pain in the backside for them. You know, it's about developing a relationship with them as well. But if you're upfront and tell them what you're there to observe, and you're there to observe the process in order that they can have more time and their work is actually easier. It's not about working faster, it's about removing all the waste so they have more time to work. So I hope that answers the question.
No, that's very good. I think it's very much about breaking down those barriers initially, which is great. To deploy this tool tomorrow, because this is a tool in a toolbox that you can actually go deploy tomorrow almost, how much knowledge and training needs to be done in advance before you can start doing direct observation within crews? So what sort of, how much knowledge do you have to have of Lean before you can start doing direct observation?
I think it's good to have a Lean base, a Lean knowledge. I would always say that if you could have the level of a green belt, that would be very good. But a knowledge and understanding of Lean is important. I think.
Sorry, Barry. I probably it was more for the crew. What sort of a knowledge? Yeah, because the direct observation, you can't do that unless you know what you're observing. So there's a strong knowledge of Lean, of a yellow or green belt, but it's more the crew on the ground. What sort of knowledge do they need to have of Lean before you start this direct observation?
I wouldn't say a whole lot, because it's in the initial 5-minute conversation when we arrive on the ground with them that we can tell them everything they need to know. It's very easy to explain to them. You know, there's not a whole lot of training that they need. It is very, very good when they start to understand the difference between value-added and non-value-added and waste. So that might take a bit of time, but through examples, through practical examples, that's the best way to teach them. I would say half an hour would be substantial, would be enough to get every point that you want to get across.
Very good. So it's so long as you have the right direct observer who knows exactly what they're talking from a Lean perspective, and then break down the barriers, you can deploy this almost immediately on any project today without having this whole level of theory in the background for the guy on the ground.
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
So,
yeah.
So the next question in there is, you mentioned a couple times, and you mentioned the fact that standardization and mapping, once you figure out where the problem is and standardizing that and deploying that across the crews is hugely important. How do you do that standardization and the mapping? Is it something that's done back in the office, or do you do it with the guys on the ground?
The standardization would be the trade company themselves own the activity, so we would look at the process with them, and we would go through that standardization method with them. They have a current process which currently takes place, and whatever recommendations we give them, then we look at their whole process and we eliminate whatever it is we think is causing them difficulty and all the recommendations. So it is an office-based exercise, but it's very much the knowledge of everybody combining a team together, coming up with a new process.
Very good. So it's in around a team-based approach to developing it, rather than it's developed in the office and dumped on the guys in the field.
Yeah, John, can I come in on this?
Yes, certainly, Richard.
Yeah, just to add on to that point as well. In a lot of observations we've done, what we have found is that people have been following documented procedures, you know, whether they're scopes of work, whether they're specs, whether they're training packs, and so on. So as Barry outlined, if a process or a procedure, a documented process or procedure, is identified to have gaps in it, and that's leading to, you know, waste creeping into the processes on the ground, it's very important to make sure that that documentation is updated and then recommunicated back out as the new baseline procedure to the team. Otherwise, if it's reliant on, you know, tribal knowledge, then people can very quickly slip back to what they used to do previously. You know, so it's the standard plan, do, check, act cycle, where you need to make sure that you close out on all of training, documentation, procedures, and scope of work. So when the company goes to the next project, they're actually sure, and they're not seeing the same waste at the next site that they go to.
So it's standardization and communication and making sure everybody is operating behind that, as opposed to just standardize it and leave it on the shelf.
Yeah, that's exactly it, because then it's not continuous improvement, John, right? What it does is it just it works once, and then you go back to the old way of doing it again. So that's one of the learnings that we've found over the last number of years of doing these projects on site.
Very good. We've about 4 or 5 questions, and just to let folks know, if you have questions, if you can post them on the webinar under the question section, and we'll get them and we'll ask. If we don't get all the questions, we will send them out afterwards with everybody that has attended. So the next question there is, what is the most frequent waste you see when you observe in the field? But on top of that, which one is the easiest to fix? And they're kind of two-ended questions. What's the most frequent, which is probably on the slide, but what's the easiest one to fix based on your experience?
Yeah, sure, another good question. So overall our observations, motion on average is probably the highest, and towards the end of an observation it'll still be the highest as well. There are days when it won't be the top waste, but they are few and far between. The reason why motion would feature so heavily is because it's interlinked between all the other wastes. Like, for example, if someone is going to get materials and then they come back without any materials, then what was originally planned to be retrieving materials waste turns into motion waste. You know, so it's the commentary around which goes along with this that explains why there are no materials ready. So I would say that the easiest waste to fix would be retrieving materials, because it's very easy to move materials easier or a shorter distance to where you're installing them. Now, it'll have a huge impact if originally the distance was very large. So I would say that's probably one of the easiest things to fix, retrieving materials out of all the wastes.
Okay, very good. Just as you're speaking there, you're referring to these terms like weighting, moving, measuring. Do you find, and retrieving material, did you find with the crews that they start to use those terms in your discussions, or are we talking almost a different language to the guy on the ground? Did you see that using these words created barriers, or that people start to use them in the conversations over time?
No, surprisingly enough, when there's direct observations going on, and if you go back to look at if you're with the crew for 3 or 4 days, they begin to understand nearly every single waste that you're talking about, and they'll come and say to you, I understand I'm measuring now, or this discussion, or cleaning. You know, they start to pick up on things very, very quickly, and you know, that little bit of on-the-job training is invaluable, really. So yes, they do pick up on these things.
Very good. And next question, have DPS tried linking direct observation with value stream mapping?
Actually, John, I'll come in on that one. What we've done is that when we get onto the productivity improvement roadmap, right, which is basically the root causes of why we're seeing things like 20% weighting and 23% moving. The level of work that's required in order to make that corrective action may need a value stream map. It may need a Kaizen event. It could be a just-in-time implementation, or you know, the what's the Nike one, the just do it implementation. So depending on the magnitude of the change that's required in order to be able to implement the corrective action, you'll use various you know, I don't know how to call it, escalation levels of problem-solving methodologies. Yeah, we've in order to show people where waste has occurred, we have published process maps in order to show where the waste occurs. I don't see us we haven't gone down to takt time and value stream mapping, because effectively during a 10-hour period you could be recording up to, you know, 400 to 500 observations. You wouldn't be able to fit a value stream map onto that, but I think it's very good feedback. We could show, we find that a process flow map is enough to be able to communicate where the opportunities lie.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Richie. There's I think the next question is a two-part question. Is direct observation a solution stroke process to preventing waste in construction? Sorry, it's just I would jump in. Another question jumped in there on top of it. I'll repeat that again. Is direct observation a solution stroke process to preventing waste in construction? And I think the tone of the question here is, does that substitute for is collaboration between all stakeholders on a project therefore required? So it's really, is direct observation substituting collaboration is the question here.
Again, I'll come in on that one, John. I don't think that's no. The answer is no, right? It's not a substitute for collaboration on a project. Barry alluded to the point earlier, and we have historical information on this, that people tend to be so busy on their projects. The project manager is, you know, managing the project, the construction manager is managing construction, the foremen are trying to get work done, that if there's not a independent process or a third-party process for actually, you know, actively driving the observation of waste, of measuring the productivity or measuring the progress that the project was planning to make, then you will let the opportunity for improvement go by. Having collaboration on a project only emphasizes it. It helps us to implement the solutions faster, but having collaboration at the beginning of a project, we have worked on projects where, yes, there has been massive improvement because there's actually great collaboration, but there's still inefficiencies there that the direct observation process can help highlight and the path to solution will be faster if there's good collaboration on the project.
Very good. So it's not one substitutes the other, they're complementary.
They're complementary, thank you.
So next question, have you received positive feedback from crews following implementation of direct observation findings? And to extend that a little bit further, did they come back and say, hold on a second, I didn't realize what we were doing was this type of waste or whatever, and they found it as a good tool for themselves moving forward. So have you received positive feedback from crews as a result of direct observation, is the question.
Yes, we have. Yeah, absolutely. I think when we first started out, one of the things that we observed was obviously the amount of times that people were going to a storage area to go and collect materials, bring them back to the area they were working in. So one of our suggestions was to supply the crews maybe with some sort of mobile mechanism for bringing their tools and materials with them. So mobile trolleys were given to the crews by one trade company, which was really, really good. It was a visual thing, and the crews really, really appreciated it. They thought it was brilliant. It took nearly, I would say, an hour out of their day every day from when they were retrieving materials. That was good in both ways. It reduced the waste, and it also gave them something visual that they could use for their tools and materials, and stopped them going back and forth all day long. Yeah, it has been very, very positive, and a lot of positive feedback. We always go back and ask crews how the things that people said they were going to implement, how they've been done, are they helping you more? And the answer is always yes, because people see the benefit in it. People see what the outcome is. So yeah, the feedback has been very good from crews.
And John, I'll just add to that as well. As Barry said earlier on, it's normally the crews on the ground that are extremely frustrated. The welder comes to work every day to weld. The fitter comes to work every day to fit pipe, right? Invariably, these guys don't like sitting around all day or standing around all day and not working. They come to work, They also find that the direct observation process gives them a voice, where what may have been seen previously as them, let's say, complaining about the situation that they're in, they now have a quantifiable, measurable way of actually turning that complaint into a piece of data, which the productivity team and the direct observation team will then turn into data to be able to present their argument back to the client or the construction management team in a beneficial way to everyone. So when the trades start to see that people are listening to them and that improvements are being made, which allows them to proceed with the work that they like to do, then yes, we've received very complimentary feedback on that, and we've also received very complimentary feedback and, as I said earlier, repeat business from clients because of that type of improvement that we see. So so I think yeah, we do not have a happiness quantifier, but maybe I'll get Barry to do a direct observation on that the next time, and we'll have a look at that as well.
Very good. So next question in there, is there anything that you've seen that stands out in terms of technology that made a difference in the reduction of waste?
Yeah, well, the first thing that comes to mind would be in relation to BIM, Building Information Modeling, and in particular the use of BIM in the field to enable quick decisions with regard to clash resolution. That's particularly what comes to my mind anyway. I found that the companies who use BIM have a distinct advantage of those who do not. Those are using mobile units, specifically tablets, have a distinct advantage because let's say you get a clash in the field and guys are there discussing how are we going to work around this, what are we going to do, what can we change. If somebody's there with a tablet, they can look at the model and see what the options are straight away and come up with a solution in a very quick time frame. So I would say definitely BIM is something that stands out for me. Taking that to another level, we did have one particular crew unit who used BIM as a preemptive clash resolution tool. So they would go around maybe a day or two before something was going to be installed in a particular area and see where the clashes were occurring. They would take it offline, resolve the clash there and then when the guys wanted to go and build, there was no clash there for them. So that was really something that was eye-opening from a technology point of view. Yeah, that's what comes to mind anyway.
Okay, we have a couple of questions left, and we have 2 questions left. So the next question is then around the senior management within the client companies, but also within the trade partner companies. What way did senior management look at this? Particularly the question is in here around the finance folks. How did they look at this information and data, and did they find this to be of useful use, and did they find it to be useful more like a time and motion studies rather than a lean tool? Have you thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll come in on that one, John. Funnily enough, the Pareto of issues that identify where the gaps are happening on the project, a significant portion of the high-level Pareto items are actually client-owned items. So when the first sets of observations are done and when the data is presented, the client themselves tend to get a bit of an awakening, which outlines to them that there's a lot of productivity loss on projects because predecessors that are normally supplied by the client are not in place in time for the work, even though they may have been committed to. So the clients tend to, I can understand if the question is coming from a finance perspective, you know, if the client is concerned that do we have people standing around waiting all day and not getting the work done, the answer to that from all of our observations is yes, you do have people significantly standing around for a period of time not doing value-added work. But what the client gets a surprise with is when we present the Pareto breakdown of observations, and the client finds that actually there's a lot of improvements that can be done on their side as well. Earlier on, we alluded to, you know, depending on the severity of the change that needs to occur, you have to go up the problem-solving escalation tree. We've had direct conversations with clients on how their actions are impacting the trade productivity in the field. So as long as it's presented in a, you know, neutral, third-party, objective, quantitative fashion, I would say 100% of our clients have come back and said that they've appreciated the data and changes have been made because of that.
Very, very good. I could see you were holding yourself back there, Richie, with your words. It is very politely put, I think. So the final question here is very much a general lean question rather than specific to direct observations. Is there any advice you might give to people who want to take a few steps down a lean journey tomorrow? How can you get started from your thoughts? What are the couple things you could do to get started on a lean journey rather than going through 20 hours of courses first? What are the first couple of steps you could take for a smaller company that wants to get on this journey? Any thoughts?
From my perspective, John, I think first of all it's about demystifying lean. Lean has been around for a number of years, and on a number of occasions I've been at reviews where people hear that you know, lean is for cars. You know, it's come from Toyota and it's great for cars, and then if it's not for cars, it's great for manufacturing, and sure, construction could never take lean on board, you know. So I think that the first thing would be to try and demystify the fact that, you know, lean is about you know, processes and flows. And construction is an entire process and flow. It's a handoff industry, right? If the pre-work is not done, the following work can't be done. So it's actually rampant for lean. If I was going to suggest anything, I would say contact someone who has done it. Find yourself a coach. You don't need to go down a significant education path and at the beginning. As your adaptation and utilization of lean grows, then you should increase your education to go for it. But one of the simplest lessons to learn right at the beginning is the standardization of waste and implementing an Eyes for Waste program within your company, and that requires nothing more than, you know, a couple of hours of a presentation with a few people that are eager to take this on board and some coaching, you know. And believe me, once we've seen it ourselves, and we've seen it with a lot of companies that we've worked with. Once you start to see the benefits, once you start to identify, oh my God, I can't believe there's that much waste in what we're doing, it sort of becomes addictive, you know, and in a sense it becomes muscle memory. After a while you find out that you just can't look at something without identifying waste, but then the key thing is that you actually do something about it and you eliminate it. Right, so for me, I would say start with the 7 types of waste and start with some coaching.
Very good. Barry, have you thoughts?
Just from a practical implementation point of view, on site, whenever we roll out productivity improvement program, the tradespeople are always looking for something practical they can implement very quickly. So one thing I would recommend is a 5S exercise on tool trolleys. So over a lot of observations that we've seen, it can take up to half an hour or 45 minutes of the day, every day, people sifting through tool trolleys to find the tool that they need or the material that they need. So a simple 5S exercise, which is sort out what you have, understand what you need, get rid of what you don't need, and then put your tools that you use most frequently in the top drawers of your tools. Make a foam base for them so that they're sitting into something that they'll stay in all the time, so that when you go back, you know it's there the next time. That's something very, very simple that you can implement very quickly, and it has a huge impact. So that's for me, that's one thing that stands out very, very quickly from a practical point of view.
Very good, Barry. Thank you very much. I must say that was absolutely excellent. So thank you very much, Barry and Richie. If you want to go on to the backup slides, I'd urge people to stay on the bridge for the next couple of minutes, and we'll finish a couple of minutes too. So if you can scroll on, Barry and Richie, if you want to move on the slides to the backup, that would be great. You'll get an automatic prompt at the end. So just stay there for 1 second. So the next webinar, we're delighted that Sean McCarthy is going to present the next webinar. Sean, and the topic will be sustainable lean transformation. And I think this may be one hugely important webinar. It's on the 7th of December at 3 p.m. and it's very much about how do you embed and lean into your organization and keep it there, because I think the nature of the industry we're in is cyclical, and it's kind of you either have a feast or a famine. So it's how do you embed lean into your organization as a way, and I think Richie and Barry mentioned a lot about how you can adopt it within your organization and keep it there. So Sean's bringing a huge amount of experience from the industry, and he's going to share that with us on the 7th of December with Sustainable Lean Transformation. So thank you for that, Sean. I know you're on the bridge also. So if you want to move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so there's 2 other events coming up in the short term that I just want to tell people about. This is all on LinkedIn and Twitter, and on our website also. There's a lean morning, breakfast morning with PM group on Thursday 17th of November. You can see it there on the screen. It's a morning event. It's very much, and it's on in Waterford, I believe, yes, in the WIT in Waterford, and contact Fionnuala Murray and PM Group should you want to attend. It's early morning, so as you can see, we've got webinars, we've got events, and we've got lean mornings. Owen Corm is giving a keynote, so that's the first one in the Waterford area, the first lean morning. So drop Fionnuala a note if you want to attend that. So on to the next slide. And sorry, that one is limited to a certain volume of people. So this one is our next upcoming LCI Ireland Learning event. It's sponsored by the Designer Group. It's on the 23rd of November. The link is down the bottom. This material will go out, but if you go on to Twitter or LinkedIn, you can register for this event. This is probably one of those watershed events also. It's going to be hugely important for the LCI because we're very much breaking into the OPW and the public works. Jim O'Sullivan of the OPW is giving a keynote speech. Also the breakout sessions are hugely interesting. If you go down through, there's quite a diverse list of breakout sessions with you've got Eamon Devoy there, you've got the IT side of it, you've got Viewpoint, you've got technology down the bottom. And then the wrap-up, which is one of the things which is becoming very apparent in Ireland, the adoption of last planner system, and we're probably a little bit slower than other countries for adoption of last planner system. So we're going to have a talk from Six Consulting, Steve Ward, on that. So that's a pretty impressive lineup of people and training, and that's free to attend, but you need to register in advance. So if you want to go on to the next slide. Okay, so that's the last slide. So so there'll be a survey pop up on your screen once we close this bridge. So I'd like to thank Barry and Richie again for their excellent presentation. This material, as I say, will be on LinkedIn, on the website, and on Twitter. And thank you very much for everybody. And we'll see you hopefully at the next webinar and the event, and also the breakfast morning. And I'd like to thank PM Group again for sponsoring these lean webinars. So thank you, and we will talk to you soon again. Thank you. Bye.
Right. Thanks, John.
Cheers, lads.
Thank you.